Good morning, everyone. Oh, this place is hopping. I'm so glad to see it. My name is John Higgins, and welcome to another South St. George show. If you've been here before, it's always a pleasure to see you. Welcome back. And if you're new to our programs, welcome to the party. This is how we start our week. Every Monday morning, we celebrate entertainment's leaders, legends, and icons. This morning is certainly no exception. Today, we are taking a virtual road trip to Little Falls, New Jersey. We are going back to the Yogi Berra Museum, and we are honored to be joined by Jenny Pollock. And Jenny mentioned that her colleague Lindsay would be joining us. So we're very, very pleased to be speaking with them. Now be sure to keep your camera and microphone off throughout today's program. If you have any questions on Zoom or on Facebook, put them in the chat, and we will make sure that Jenny can see those. And if you'd like, hop on the chat right now and let us know where you're joining us from. Next week, Sal is going to be presenting the making of The Godfather with our friend Dan Babeo in honor of its 50th anniversary. And as always, we have Cassandra St. George behind the scenes, making sure that everything runs smoothly. Cassandra, please hop on and say hi as well. So without further ado, here's the man of the hour, Sal St. George. Sal,
hey, John. Yeah,
hello.
we're here. We're ready to go. And I'm excited to see Jenny again. Hi, Jenny.
Hey.
Jenny, tell everybody exactly where your museum is located.
Sure. Just to introduce myself fully, I'm Jenny Pollock. I'm the education director here at the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center. I'll tell you a second about the Learning Center part, because that's important. We're in Little Falls, New Jersey, on the campus of Montclair State University. And shortly, I'll be joined by my friend and colleague, Lindsay Berra. She's also Yogi Berra's oldest grandchild, and she'll have plenty to share. But yeah, that's where we are. We're on the campus of Montclair State in New Jersey.
That sounds great. Now, how did you were you always a sports fan? Was this something that was in your wheelhouse, or was this something you said, hey, they needed a director, let me jump in?
Well, no, I'll be in full disclosure. I was never a sports person. I grew up in New York City, where I was super artsy fartsy and took tap dancing lessons and art classes. And I didn't even know in the 70s that girls could do sports. That's a whole other story. But I come from a theater, creative writing, and education background. And maybe 6 or 7 years ago, leadership changed at the museum, and they really needed to do a huge education outreach, which is part of the Learning Center, which was what Yogi's dream really was. When Yogi passed away in 2015, he had been, the rock star in the house, and everybody came to the museum mostly to meet him, and he would give tours, and he was just an incredibly lovely, welcoming guy who loved to tell stories and have people in his museum. But truthfully, he really wanted his museum not just to be this memory of his life, but a place where students could come to learn about anything: the history of baseball, the connection between baseball, sports, science, and math. We now teach about the history of the Negro Leagues and race in sports. So really, the Learning Center part of the museum is just bustling. And doing programs like this with you guys is just another way that we are able to really increase our outreach. And I see someone's here from Austin, Texas. I mean, how great to be able to connect to anyone, anywhere there's an internet connection.
Isn't that wonderful? And
Yeah.
That's an anomaly. What you just mentioned, you said Yogi was actually there giving tours. We've done several dozen of these celebrity museums, and very few of them actually had that celebrity in their home, in their museum, because many of them were built after that person had passed away. You
Exactly.
were very fortunate to have him there.
Yeah, so we're about to, coming September, we're going to celebrate our 25th anniversary of the museum being around. We opened in 1998. And I think even at one point, Yogi said, this doesn't happen unless you're dead, So he said something, of course, in his more eloquent, fun way than I'm paraphrasing him now.
And we're going to go into a lot of those yogiisms during the rest of the hour.
And I don't know if Lindsay is on, if she can turn her camera on so I can bring her in.
I see Lindsay here, and Lindsay now has co-host powers.
There she is.
There she is.
Good morning, Lindsay.
And Lindsay, you're muted.
Sorry, good morning.
I'll officially introduce Lindsay is also an athlete and sports journalist, and also sits on the board here of our museum. It is incredibly helpful personally to me by constantly telling me great stories about her gramps or grandpa. And I'm so lucky when I get to do a program with her, as she's an incredibly busy woman. So welcome back, Lindsay. So good to have you.
Lindsay, was it your grandfather that influenced you to go into sports?
There were a lot of things that influenced me to go into sports. My mom likes to take credit for the sports journalism thing because as a senior in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with myself. And I was, I took AP English and was into sports. And she was like, "You're a good writer. You like sports. Go to journalism school." So she'll tell you it was her idea. But because of Grandpa Yogi, I was interested in basically all sports growing up. My whole family was, and I got exposed to so much of it as a kid that it kind of was inevitable, I think.
Did he actually see you in any of your sports endeavors?
Oh yeah, so he passed away at the age of 90. I was 39 years old when he passed away. So he came to all of my games as a kid. He for up until I was 10 and 12 years old, he was still working in baseball. So like softball seasons, and stuff over the summer, he wasn't around, but he was at all of my ice hockey games growing up. Winter stuff, he made a point of going to. So yeah, he was very involved.
And when did you realize that your grandpa wasn't just an ordinary grandpa, that he was somebody special?
It's funny. My nephew turned 1 yesterday, and I was talking to my brother, his father, about this, about how we are grown adults and we still have a hard time with that realization. Like, we talk about him as grandpa to each other. And when you see something on television about Yogi Berra, we know intellectually that that's grandpa, but in our heads, it's kind of two different people. And it's silly, I know, because, I know my grandfather's Yogi Berra, but it's not the way I think about him. The guy who is hitting all the home runs and in the old black and white videos, it's almost like it's a different person, even though I know it's not.
So he had no airs about him.
None whatsoever. And I say that people always ask what he was like at home. And I'm like, he is exactly like what you saw on television or what he was like when you met him at whatever restaurant or in whatever parking garage. He was the same with me, with his sons, with waiters in restaurants, with presidents of the United States. What you saw was what you got with him.
Many years ago, I was walking down 57th Street in New York, 8th Avenue. And right in front of me was Muhammad Ali.
Oh, God.
And he had about 4 or 5 people behind him that were his, I guess, guardians. They looked out for him. But as he was walking, more and more people started forming around him. And by the time he got to the end of the block, there had to be about 40, 50 people there, all cheering him on. When you went to your games and Yogi Berra is sitting in the stands, did people recognize him? Did they approach him?
So yes, you couldn't go anywhere with him without him being recognized because he was a very recognizable person. And even folks who didn't know specifically that he was Yogi Berra would be like, "That little guy with the big nose, like he looks familiar. Who is he?" Right? So, but he would kind of go down to the end of the rink and sit behind the goals at hockey games, or he would go out along the fence. High school, by the time I got into high school, so many of the kids that I grew up with and their families were so accustomed to seeing him around that they kind of left him alone. It was always the visiting team who'd be like, "Oh my God, is that Yogi Berra? Is that really him? I'm not sure." And then like by the third period or so, they would like work up the courage to go and talk to him. Restaurants, people were a pain in the butt. They would stick like stuff underneath him to like, he'd be like eating a mouthful of rigatoni and then someone would slide like some old program under. "Can you sign this?" He'd be like, "Okay, no." But he didn't think of himself as a famous person. I'll tell one quick story. I was at the ballpark with my dad and uncles. It was some day at Yankee Stadium, I don't know. And we were in the Steinbrenner's box, which was behind home plate upstairs. And there were a lot of other old Yankees in a suite down along the right field line. And Grandpa wanted to go and see his friends. And he said, "Come on, Linz, let's walk down to right field and go see Gator and Goose and whatever." And I said, all right, we'll take the elevator downstairs and walk underneath and we'll take it back up at the end. And he's like, why are we going to do that? Let's just walk down there. And I'm like, on the concourse, there's 56,000 people here today. We'll never get there. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, you can't walk on the concourse. You're Yogi Berra. And he did this to me. He did a little thumb his nose at me. And I grabbed Dale and Timmy and my uncles. And I was like, we got to walk with Grandpa on the concourse. He's like, why? And, they didn't understand. And he just refused to take the elevator. And it took us an hour and a half to get down there because everybody stopped. And we were like, I told you so, but Grandpa just doesn't wrap his brain around the fact that he's not just someone who can pick up his own dry cleaning and go to the grocery store and not be bothered.
Okay, I've got one silly question. It's a really goofy one. How did your grandfather like the Hanna-Barbera Yogi Bear?
So back in the 50s, whenever that happened, I don't think he was super excited about it because it was making fun of him, and Grandpa was often made fun of for his looks and told that he looked like an ape, he looked like a bear, he was too ugly to be a Yankee. And I think the Yogi Bear kind of embraced all of those goofy things and perpetuated this myth that he wasn't smart or it just wasn't as funny as the cartoon was. It wasn't like a favorable representation of Grandpa. And his attorneys at the time tried to do something about it, but because Yogi was not my grandfather's real name, back then nicknames weren't protected and there was nothing that they could do about it. And obviously Yogi and Boo Boo became very lovable characters, and I think my grandfather just kind of let it go. But the initial reaction was like, hey, come on, people, like, give me a break. I'm not a dumb bear. But he didn't let too much really bother him. So.
And would you tell our guests his real name?
His real name is Lorenzo Pietro Berra, Lawrence Peter.
Okay, you know what? I have a feeling we've been ignoring Jenny and she's biting at the bit.
No, I was going to say, I don't, because it's the people, Sal. The people want to see the museum. And when we did, I don't remember now when it was last June or when we did the program on the history of the Negro Leagues, we completely neglected Yogi. So today is all Yogi all the time. And I'll just start giving a tour. Should we do that? Or did you have more questions?
Let's go for it. And Lindsay, if you have anything you want to add to what we're talking about, jump in.
Yeah, Jenny's really good at teeing me up. And there's also a whole bunch of little comments here in the chat that we can address at some point too. So.
And I was going to say, Lindsay, well, audience, feel free to put questions in the chat whenever you like, and we'll sort of plod along and get to them as we can, or if we don't get to it, we'll save it for the end when we do a Q&A. But actually,
I just saw one question. How did he get the nickname Yogi?
I hate telling this story because it's very anticlimactic.
It's not, Lindsay.
Yes,
it's good. Lindsay and I, we'll fight. No, it's a good story. And you tell it well. So just go ahead and tell it.
It's not even really a story. He was playing American Legion baseball when he was young, and somebody had seen a movie that took place in India. We believe it was Gunga Din, but we're not sure. And Grandpa used to sit in the batter's box. I'll stand up, like with his arms folded like this, and or in like the on deck circle. And he said, "You look like one of those yogis," and it stuck. And that's it.
It's good enough.
Anticlimactic, but as of that, I'm also going to show you guys one of the famous pictures of Yogi. I get a little glare here, but
you do.
I'll figure out how to get it to stop. Sorry, wait, it's coming. This is the fun of technology. Wait, maybe I need to be on this side.
Jenny, do we have any pictures teed up or no?
I do, but the problem is I just can't do them both at the same time. So here's, yes, and I can show. So this is Yogi when he was about 10, right, Lindsay? And,
yeah, so
this is from the Sandlot. So Lindsay, you go ahead and tell us the left-handed story and the Joe Garagiola.
So this is on the hill in St. Louis, and the guy with the amazing head of hair over Grandpa's shoulder there, his left shoulder to the right side of the screen, is Joe Garagiola, who was Grandpa's across the street neighbor and also made the Baseball Hall of Fame. He played for the Cardinals, won a couple World Series, and was a broadcaster. But what's special about this photo, and all the old Yankee fans were always like, wait a minute, is that right? This is the only photo that exists of my grandfather hitting right-handed. When he was, shortly after this, my Uncle Tony, who was the best baseball player of all the brothers, decided to switch Grandpa around and make him hit left-handed because he thought he had a better chance of making the big leagues as a left-handed hitting catcher. And baseball fans here will definitely understand that Yogi Berra is not Yogi Berra if he's hitting right-handed. So it's just an interesting story. So Grandpa had 3 older brothers, Uncle Mike, Uncle John, Uncle Tony, and he would say that they were all better baseball players than he was. But they had to work to help the family. Family was a very poor Italian immigrant family. But by the time it kind of got down to my grandfather, who was the youngest boy, the older guys kind of ganged up on great grandpa Pietro and made him let grandpa play baseball so one of them would have a chance.
And I'll just jump in here and say this is the house that Yogi grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, in an Italian neighborhood called The Hill. Just to be super buttoned up, we'll start with Yogi was born in 1925. He actually was born here, but his family came over from Italy in about 1909, I think, Lindsay, right? And
Yeah.
So he mostly spoke Italian at home, and his parents did not speak English when they first got here. Definitely, this is something we really like to talk to students about because people don't always know that Italians were treated pretty poorly when they came over here at the beginning of the 20th century. Not unlike how a lot of immigrants are treated today, sadly. But Yogi definitely bore his share of, horrible slurs, like Lindsay had pointed out to earlier, being called an ape or being told he was too ugly or, didn't look like a baseball player. And I'm trying to see. So here's some of the old newspaper footage from, his early years.
So Grandpa and Joe Garagiola, I'm forgetting Joe's father's name, Jenny. Anyway, Joe's father and Grandpa's father worked together in the Laclede Christie Clayworks, a brickyard in St. Louis. And they lived directly across the street from each other. And they were friends. Joe passed away. Grandpa passed away, like 6 months before Joe did. And the night before Grandpa passed away, we had him on the phone with Joe. And Joe always used to say there was never a day that I didn't know Yogi. Literally, they were friends for 90 whole years. And I just always used to love how Joe used to say, I made the big leagues and I won a bunch of World Series, but I wasn't even the best catcher on my block.
Jenny, is his original home still there?
So, this is so wait, so 5447 Elizabeth Avenue. My cousin Mary Frances still lives in the house, and you can rent it out on Airbnb for $88 a night and sleep in the upstairs bedroom that Grandpa slept in growing up.
Wow.
Oh, I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm just seeing the camera comments. I'll try very hard to be more steady. I was like looking around for other pictures of Joe Garagiola, but I think that was it for right now. Okay, so how about we move on to the family? So Lindsay, you can tell us who are Yogis. Tell us about your grandma and their 3 sons, your dad and your uncles.
My Grammy Carmen grew up on a farm in a little town called Boss, Missouri, 2 hours, like kind of southwest of St. Louis. And she came to the city when she was a kid, and she was waiting tables at Biggie's restaurant, which was Stan Musial's restaurant on the hill. And Grandpa saw her coming and going and thought she was really pretty. And he would grab Joe Garagiola and go in there and sit at the bar and order glasses of water because they couldn't afford to eat there. And then Joe would get hungry and say, yo, can we leave and go somewhere and get some lunch? I'm hungry. And Grandpa would say, Joe, I just want to look at her. So he was kind of stalking Grammy Carmen for a while. She didn't agree to go out with him right away. She finally said yes. She says that she said no because she didn't date ball players. She thought she was married. She had a whole bunch of excuses. But once they started dating, they were married, I think, within 9 months. They had 3 sons. My dad, Larry, is the oldest, and then Timmy and Dale. And then 11 grandkids, and there's 3 great-grandchildren. Now, that's my dad up there with the glasses.
That's Larry, and that's Tim, and that's Dale.
Timmy played for the Baltimore Colts in the NFL, and Dale played for the Pirates and the Yankees in baseball.
Lindsay, how long were they married?
65 years. When she passed, 65 years.
And again, forgive me for my bad camera work here, but this picture way up on the ceiling, oh my gosh, can you see it? That's
my dad. Mm-hmm.
So that's Yogi holding the first son, Larry, and Lindsay, that's his mom, right?
Yeah, Grandma Paulina. Yeah,
Grandma Paulina, right. And somebody asked if 88 was Yogi's number. Nope, it was number 8.
Number 8.
And when you come to the museum, you'll see 8s all over the places, crawling with 8s. Mm-hmm. So we have this little section here in the museum that's just about Yogi's passion for sports and how he used to tell kids that they should try to do as many different sports as possible. It's really good for your body, not just baseball. He loved golf. He loved hockey. He also loved bowling.
Jenny, back up to the love letters for a sec.
Oh, sure. Yeah, tell us about the love letters.
So if you ever get a chance to come to the museum, and I know you can't see these great, but you can sort of see that it's a very slanted, like pretty cursive handwriting. So Grandpa only went to school to the 8th grade, but he went to Catholic school, and the nuns would beat you with a ruler if you didn't have nice penmanship. So he ended up with very nice cursive, which he used to write Grammy all kinds of love letters when he was on the road. The first year that they were dating, most of them I think are from 1949, and they're on the hotel stationery back when hotels used to actually give you things for free, and they had that embossed stationery, and they're very, very funny and very, very sappy, and I like to make fun of them. It'll be like, my dearest darling, however will I last until I see you again? I love you, I love you, I love you 3 times. G-E-E, I love you always. And then he'll put in something like, I went 3 for 4 today. So they're pretty funny if you get a chance to come and visit and read them. And then I will say a little bit more about the hockey. That hockey picture got him in a lot of trouble. George Weiss was the general manager of the Yankees at the time, and a friend of his, that this picture appeared in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and a friend of his cut it out and sent it to him in New York, and Grandpa got a telegram that said, you better get your ass off those skates, because they were worried about their star young catcher breaking his ankle or something, ice skating in the off season.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, he did play a lot of golf as he when he was playing and played into his late 80s. Remember we said he switched from being a natural right-hander to hitting left-handed. He actually played golf the opposite way. He played golf right-handed, but he putt lefty, and he always carried an extra left-handed 8-iron in his bag. So if he ever had a bad lie behind a tree, he could turn around and hit the other way. And as he used to say, he really was ambidextrous. He could really do anything with either hand. So any golf.
Did you ever play golf with him, Lindsay?
So I didn't start golfing until 5 years ago, till after Grandpa passed away. So no, I did not play golf with him. I did everything.
Forgive my camera work. I'm going to just go to another golf shot over here. Yeah. Oh, I thought this was here. We go. There's more golf. Yeah.
Yeah. He played a lot of golf.
Okay, but now, given that we're kind of going a little bit through Yogi's history and his life, let's talk about when he was 17 and he joined the Navy. You want to talk a little bit about that? So here's a really old picture. He may be 18 in this picture, right, Lindsay?
Yeah, I think he was 18 when he went to Norfolk. So he was playing in Norfolk, Virginia for the Norfolk Tars. And the big naval base was right down the street, and World War II was escalating, and he was extremely proud of his adopted country, and he literally walked onto the naval base and volunteered. So he enlisted in the Navy before he had a chance to be drafted. And I guess he found basic training kind of boring, because when they asked for volunteers for a special top secret assignment, he said yes. And that was basically learning how to operate these LCSSs, landing craft support smalls, the rocket boats, that we used in the D-Day invasion. So Grandpa ended up off of Omaha Beach on a ship called the USS Bayfield. The LCSSs came off that ship, and he was a machine gunner providing cover fire for our troops going ashore during the D-Day invasion.
And I'll just add for the audience to know that we currently have a temporary exhibit here at the Yogi Berra Museum called Act of Valor, and highlighting Bob Feller and all of the some 300 professional baseball players who joined the war effort, enlisted, and then also made it into the Baseball Hall of Fame. There's actually 39 that fought in World War II and then made it into the Baseball Hall of Fame. So if we have time at the end, I can show you some of that exhibit too.
Lindsay, as a writer, have you considered writing a book about your grandfather?
I've written a lot of different like pieces and things about him over the years, and there's so much, I've given so many interviews and so much has been written about him that I sort of got to a point where I have two feelings about that. First of all, I feel like some of the stories that I have left, I would like to keep for me. And then the other thing is, it would be so difficult for me to write a book about Grandpa and worry about it like not being good enough, that I don't think I want to put myself through that. We do have there is a documentary coming out next summer that I've been very heavily involved in. So we have that on the way, and you know, with the museum. So I think there's a lot that kind of keeps his legacy alive without me having to write.
And what's the name of the documentary?
It's called It Ain't Yogi, It Ain't Over. And we're currently kind of shopping it around to festivals, trying to figure out where it's going to make its debut. So just if anyone, if you follow the museum or follow me on social media, we'll keep you all posted.
And we have quite a few, obviously, we have quite a few Yogi fans right now watching us from around the world. Is there a book that you would recommend?
I really liked Alan Barra's book, hold on, it's actually right here. I can show it to you.
Yeah, it's called like Eternal Yankee. That's the first book I read when I first got the job working here, almost 5 years ago.
Alan Barra. It's funny, you remember it because we're B-E-R-R-A and he's B-E-R-R-A. This is one that I like.
I'm just gonna walk around and show you guys more pictures.
And Jen, we're gonna have to get into the Yogi-isms.
We do, we absolutely
All we got right now is the amphibian.
Yeah, well, you know what, how about I'll go walk over to the most famous Yogiism. Here I'm passing this other really famous funny picture of Yogi behind his mask.
This photo actually was the Grandpa's first cover of Sport magazine, the photo with the mask.
Oh, cool. And see, I'm learning stuff today too. So here's the one that we love to share with kids because it's so useful. This famous, can you guys read that with my camera work? It ain't over till it's over. This became famous in 1972 because of the Mets. Lindsay, would you like to tell this story? Because I'm a Mets fan. Go Mets! If you're a Mets fan, put it in the chat.
Wrong. I always tell this story wrong. Like they were out of the pennant race, and he said it. Wait, that you know we'll get it ain't over. But he didn't really say it. We're not done till we're finished, and it got like morphed and became it ain't over till it's over. It's a very convoluted story.
Well, okay, but the part that is important to say is that at the time the Mets were in 17th place.
Yeah,
not surprising, they stunk, and that's when he took Yogi was the manager of the Mets at the time, and he took them to first place to win the pennant, and nobody could believe it. So the story I was told anyway, I guess from your dad, is that's when he said it ain't over till it's over.
It was originally something weird though, like it's not over until it's mathematical or something weird, and then it's
mathematically alive.
It was very weird, but it ain't over till it's over is obviously what became very famous. And I'll tell, are there any Mets fans on this call? Do we know?
Yes, please chime in, Mets fans.
This is just a funny story that I like to tell. So I Mets fan here. So Kim is a Mets fan.
Yay,
so
Kim.
My grandmother and my grandfather, too, they obviously loved being with the Yankees and lifelong friends with all Grandpa's Yankees teammates. But my grandmother always used to say, we had a lot of fun playing for the Yankees, but we didn't know what real fun was until we joined the Mets. So the Mets had this culture that everybody really loved. And Grandpa was really proud of his time with the Mets. And this funny story. I was at a bat dinner with him once, which was the baseball assistance team charity dinner. And they went around the room and announced everybody, all the famous people at the tables. And Grandpa stands up and they say, 10-time World Series winner, 18-time All-Star, 3-time MVP, Yogi Berra. He gives his little wave, he sits down, and he had this way of like backhanding you when he wanted your attention. So he like raps me across the chest with his knuckles and goes, "Lindsay." I said, "What?" He goes, "How come nobody ever mentions that I managed the 1974 All-Star game?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, they just gave you all those nice accolades and you're worried about some random All-Star game?" But it was because he brought the Mets from the basement and won the pennant that year that he was given the opportunity to manage the All-Star game. And he was angry that no one remembered it.
Right. That's great. And then back to the Yankees. We're big fans of Derek Jeter's here. Derek Jeter retired in 2014, but he was lucky enough to get to know Yogi, who used to go down to spring training in Florida all the time, so he could hang with the Yankees. And Lindsay, you have any good Derek Jeter stories?
Derek Jeter is kind of vanilla. He's so boring.
No,
They really,
he's also, we love him because he represents Yogi, like he represents leadership and good sportsmanship, and he was a great teammate and also a great athlete. But
and they really liked each other. Grandpa and Derek really liked each other. And I will always say that, so Grandpa and George Steinbrenner had a very long feud, and Grandpa stayed away from Yankee Stadium for 14 years. And he went back in 1999 after they very famously made up. And Grandpa started going to spring training again. And Jeter was still young at the time. Derek was a rookie, I think, in 96. So he'd only been in the league for a couple of years. And Grandpa becomes really good friends with Jeter and Pettit and Tino Martinez and all these guys. And I, as great as it was for them to have Grandpa around and really be able to learn from him and pick his brain, which they really did. I think it was equally beneficial for Grandpa. I think his ability to go down there and hang out with the kids and share his stories and travel and be out on the field and move around and all the good things that kind of social interaction gives to you, I think it probably added 10 years to his life. So as great as it was for the players, it was Grandpa got a lot out of that situation as well.
And this is actually from when he was in the 60s, mid 60s, when he was coaching the Yankees.
That's the 69 Mets, I think. Right
oh, that's the 69 Mets. Oh, excuse me. I'm like trying to read and look at the same time. All right. We should also talk about his great friendship with the great Jackie Robinson. Just always, there's lots of good stories here. And some of you on the call who I can tell are baseball diehard fans may know about the 1955 World Series. This is this famous moment where Jackie decides to steal home. And Lindsay, tell us what happens here.
I think everybody knows what happens. He was called safe. Grandpa very famously insisted he was out and was jumping up and down like a crazy person. If you look at those old Life magazine photos, you can see the veins popping out of his neck. He was very mad. And Grandpa insisted until the day he died that Jackie had been out. Jackie's family insists that he was safe, but what we all kind of like to say was that the more important part was that Jackie was in the league and with the opportunity to steal home to begin with, because he obviously changed the game, and him changing the landscape of baseball changed the landscape of the country and paved the way for the civil rights movement. So safer out, better that Jackie was in. But they were friends. Jackie passed away very young in 1972, and Grandpa and Jackie were friends until Jackie passed. And when Grandpa turned 90 in, what year was that? 2015. Rachel Robinson, Jackie's widow, was at his birthday party. And when she came into the museum, it was kind of crowded in the theater, and she catches Grandpa's eye through like the crowd, and she went like this, safe. And Grandpa went out, and then he walked over, and they gave each other a big hug and kiss. So it was very cute. They were, the Robinsons were good friends of the Berras and still are.
Well, Lindsay, you mentioned. Lindsay,
sorry, Sal, you have a question?
Yeah. Lindsay mentioned that she didn't feel that she could write a book about her grandfather. what you're talking about is far superior to what everybody else does. You've got that personal connection. And just hearing about you growing up in a household with grandpa coming over, that paints a whole different picture.
It will definitely be in the documentary. I'm interviewed extensively, so we'll see what you think after that. I feel like people are more likely to watch movies than read books today anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you may have a point there.
And just while I'm over in this section, I also want to point out another great friend and colleague of Yogi's was a baseball player named Lston Howard, maybe lesser known to some people on the call, but he was the first Black New York Yankee. The Yankees were very slow to integrate. It didn't happen until 1955, which was some 8 years after Jackie broke the color barrier.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Lston also came in and was basically being groomed to take Grandpa's spot as the catcher. And my grandfather, when he came into the big leagues, he was being groomed to take Bill Dickey's spot. Bill Dickey, legendary Hall of Fame catcher for the Yankees. And Bill really taught, Grandpa will tell you, he was a lousy catcher when he got to the big leagues. And Bill Dickey spent so much time with him, as Grandpa said, learning me his experiences, and really made Grandpa the catcher that he became. So Grandpa spent a lot of time with Lston Howard, teaching him about catching and really teaching him to take his spot. This doesn't happen today. Like you don't see Tom Brady tutoring the quarterback that's coming in to take his spot with the Patriots. But Grandpa was very proud of doing that and took a big interest in Lston's development. And he also, if you think about 1955, when Lston becomes the first Black Yankee, civil rights movement in this country is still 10 years away, basically. They were having spring training in Florida. Florida is still very much segregated. And when they were on the road in Florida, Lston was not allowed to eat at the white restaurants with the Yankees or stay at the white hotels with the Yankees. And Grandpa would go a lot of times to the Black restaurants and Black hotels with Ellie, so he wouldn't have to be by himself. So they were very good friends. And Arlene Howard, his widow, is still at the museum all the time. Their daughter Cheryl. So it is really amazing how these friendships that my grandparents developed with the Yankees in the 50s are still carried on through the generations. It's kind of neat.
And of course, we'd be remiss if we did not show you the 27 World Championships. In case you don't know, the Yankees have more World Championships than any team in any sport. This is not a great way to see it. It's sort of hard to see these.
Jenny, do you have the photo of the 53 ring?
I do. So bear with me, everyone. I'm also going to share my screen.
So I'll tell them. So the rings in the display that you see there with the yellow line underneath them, those are the 10 rings that Grandpa won. His 10 as a player is more than any other player in baseball. He won 3 more as a coach and manager, so 13 total. And we always tell the kids that you can't wear 10 World Series rings all at once because it's just kind of tacky. But Grandpa did wear one, so this is not how he walked around. This is just ridiculous. But the ring that he wore all the time was the ring from 1953, because the Yankees won 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. It was the first and only time any team has won 5 World Series in a row. And there were 13 players on the Yankees who were on all 5 of those teams. And those guys got the ring with the 5 on it. And so it was kind of a special thing. And he wore this on his pinky from 1953 when he got it until he died in 2015. And you can see how worn out the numbers are. We had actually at one point looked into getting this recast so you could actually read it again, but someone destroyed the mold in 1954, so that was not possible. But yeah, he wore this is probably definitely one of his most prized possessions. He wore this, and he wore his Hall of Fame induction ring from 1972. Those were the only 2 rings he wore.
And while we're in the slideshow, this is just Yogi and all the different sports he played.
So this is also the 1955 World Series. When Jackie's still home.
Huge poster of it here, which I'll show you, but it's kind of better to see it.
Yeah, so this is Gil Hodges, who was the first baseman for the Dodgers and a great friend of Grandpa's. And we teach a lot of character education programs at the Museum for Kids. And one of the things we talk about is sportsmanship. And so this is the World Series. It's obviously the biggest stage. The Dodgers and the Yankees are a huge rivalry. What happened here was Gil fouled a ball off the handle of his bat that ended up hitting him in the face. And Grandpa jumps up out of the crouch, really worried about his friend, not worried about the rivalry or the score or whatever. And he jumps up to check on Gil. You can see him touching Gil's hands. You know, you don't really see this intimate of a moment between two men very often. And we use it as a teaching point for the kids that the friendship and his buddy was more important than the big picture of the World Series at that moment.
Yes.
Lindsay, I know you said that the documentary is coming out hopefully soon. Have they ever considered doing a biopic about his life?
Yes, there are. These things kind of go. It's like a weird business, the movies. Like someone has to write a script and it has to be good enough to get done. And that has happened a few times where the person who wrote the script, it wasn't awesome and no one picked it up. There is another person attempting it right now. That sort of is beyond my scope of expertise, but it is, yes, I know it is being considered, and I would love to see that done too, because I think as cool as the documentary will be, if we want to get him kind of known and remembered by a younger generation, the biopic would be very helpful.
Who would you cast as your grandfather?
The person that we've been kicking around, I'm gonna have to Google, is, oh my God, John Bernthal. Does anyone know who he is? John Byrne.
Yeah. Yeah, he used to be on The Walking Dead, I believe.
But he kind of just has a look that he sort of just looks a little bit like Grandpa. And I don't know if anyone, am I still on the camera? Can anyone see my phone?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So he just has a good look, and his build is very similar to Grandpa's. I've met him a couple times actually. So this is who I would nominate, but you know, I'm not a Hollywood influencer, so. Wait, Jenny, show that picture again, my silly picture.
Yes. Okay, wait. Yeah, I love this picture. Let me see here.
It's on my shelf right next to me here. This one.
Yeah.
So I'm 6 years old in this picture, and this is 1984. Grandpa's managing, and I always say that if you doubt the date of the photo, check out the digital Casio watch on the guy behind us in the left-hand corner there. It's one of those calculator watches. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, it's just I loved my grandpa, and that's a picture that shows it.
And
Wait, just before. Tell me how Grandpa spoiled you, Lindsay.
He didn't, though. He was pretty tough, actually. He definitely didn't you know, buy us a lot of stuff. Like we did a lot of cool stuff with him, and he made sure we understood that we were lucky to do it. But I would definitely not say we were spoiled grandkids.
this is the picture of Joe Garagiola that I was looking for earlier that I forgot.
They're so cute.
In the museum, it's just in our archive. So this is just such a nice picture of two best friends. The house, of course, and his parents. And I can stop sharing. Do we want to just open it up to questions? And I can also go back to, I always jokingly say, like, getting a virtual tour of the museum is a bit like watching paint dry. Like, it's really hard to see everything. And
How large is the museum?
How long what?
How large is the museum?
Small.
Square feet it is, Jenny? I don't know.
I don't know the square footage, but it's basically 4 areas. So, and that part I can show you. I'm just being mindful of anyone feeling nauseous at my camera work. This is our atrium. And so behind me are all kinds of great posters of Yogi that I could show you. But back here is where you can see, if I can get the glare to go away.
That's the campus.
You're on the campus of Montclair State. Wait, I think, John, can you pin me? I don't know if Maybe I can do it. There we go. Okay. So see that behind, there's a great bronze statue of Yogi kneeling back there that lots of people come and take pictures of. And during COVID, we put a mask on him to keep him safe. And we also light him up at Christmas time. We put lots of Christmas lights all over that Yogi statue. And so that's the campus of Montclair State. Oh, the other fun thing to show you guys.
Yeah, don't forget the yogiisms.
Oh yeah, we got to get to the yogiisms.
Wait, and somebody also just asked in the
This
chat,
is-
is there one particular item in the museum you think is a must-see? Jenny, I want you to show them the Leroy Neiman print.
Okay, I will. So, and this is Jackal Stadium over here, and we have a fun skybox that I'll try to get to where you can see where Yogi used to sit when he watched the Jackals. Leroy Neiman print.
Next to Gil Hodges, to the right of Gil Hodges.
Got it, right. I was like, where the heck is that again? Okay, here it is.
Leroy Neiman, this famous sports artist, was in the stands in spring training in 1964, which was Grandpa's last year with the Yankees, and he drew this. It's a one-off charcoal drawing that even without facial features, it couldn't be anyone but my grandfather. And when my grandparents were moving from one house to another in the mid 70s, my dad and mom showed up at their house, and Graham had a big pile of stuff in the driveway that was to be thrown away. And my dad was like, oh God, because he didn't trust Grammy, and started poking through what she had designated for the garbage. And he finds this in a poster tube and says, Ma, are you sure you want to get rid of this? Because Leroy Neiman was so famous, and this is like a one of one. And it ended up in the museum, and I love it. I have a fake print of it on my wall here in my office. And I always say, if the museum was burning down, that's the one thing I would grab. I just think it's really cool.
And I also think this painting is really good too. We have a life-size version of it in a different part of the museum. Geez, it's so hard not to look at it without the glare of the laptop. I'm really sorry about that. But this is by an artist named Earl Mayan, which appeared on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post in 1957. I just love how colorful it is, and I love
Do you
it.
want to, did we show them the MVP plaques?
No, we did not. Here we go, Yogi's MVPs, and I have this in a slide too, so maybe I should
So he
show.
won 3 MVP plaques in 51, 54, and 55. And I always like to tell the folks who come in that I think, regardless of the fact that he won those 3 years, I think 1950 was his best year in the big leagues by far. And the stat line, sometimes I mess it up when I do it from memory, but he had 656 at bats. He hit 328, 28 home runs, 114 RBIs, struck out 12 times in 656 plate appearances. And it's just so amazing, because nowadays guys strike out 12 times in a weekend and think nothing of it. And he didn't strike out. He struck out 12 times the whole year. So I just think that that's a crazy, crazy stat line.
That is.
And he didn't win the MVP that year.
That's crazy. I feel like there's, here, this is for Sal. I usually take a 2-hour nap from 1 to 4.
Hey, does Sal nap a lot? What do you?
No, Sal likes the yogiism.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I've given that. And then this is another one. Oh, this is one of Lindsay's favorites.
I like the existential yogiisms. The future ain't what it used to be. If things were perfect, they wouldn't be. There's a lot of the silly ones. Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. We're lost, but we're making good time.
It's all of that. That's my favorite.
I like
this one's good too. When you come to a fork in the road. Oh, geez, how do I get rid of that glare?
You need to get one of the volunteers to follow you around, Jenny, instead of doing
That's
it
what
yourself.
we need to do. Yeah. Yeah.
If anyone ever does come and visit the museum in New Jersey, the actual fork in the road is a street that you go up, and it makes a Y, and the street that runs at the top of the Y was my grandparents' street. So it didn't matter which side of the fork you took. If you made a left, you would still end up at their house. He was giving directions to Phil Rizzuto. He said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. But the town of Montclair has put a little monument at the actual fork, and it's only about a 6-minute drive from the museum. So you can drive up the actual fork if you come visit. Phil Rizzuto, by the way, there's these cigars here. Phil Rizzuto is my father's godfather.
And they started a bowling alley together. You want to talk a little bit about that?
They did open Berra Rizzuto lanes in Clifton. When the kids are in the museum, we tell them this a lot. So Grandpa's best year in the big leagues, he made $60,000. If you extrapolate that out to in today's dollars, that's about 550,000. It's a good living, but for perspective, the league minimum is 750,000 right now. So at 60 grand, it was his best year. Most years he was making between 40 and 50,000, had to raise 3 children. So he had to have jobs in the off season. He and Joe Garagiola sold Christmas trees in a lot on the hill. They worked in the American shops in Newark selling suits. That's him and Phil Rizzuto selling suits in American shops. He worked in a hardware store. But then finally he and Phil decided to open the bowling alley so they could have a consistent income in the off season. And my Uncle John moved from St. Louis to manage the bar restaurant in the bowling alley, and Berra Rizzuto Lanes was there for a couple decades.
Did they have something, did Yogi have something to do with Yoo-Hoo?
So he and Mickey Mantle were pitchmen for Yoo-Hoo in the 50s. They did not, someone asked, did he own Yoo-Hoo? No, he didn't own Yoo-Hoo. He was just kind of paid as a, to do commercials as like a spokesperson. But one of my favorite yogiisms of all time is a Yoo-Hoo yogiism. The press conference in, I think, 1958 that was announcing Grandpa and Mickey as pitchmen for Yoo-Hoo. Grandpa always remembered the story because there was a female reporter in the front row, and that was very rare in the 50s to have a female reporter. And she raised her hand and said, "Excuse me, is that hyphenated, Yoo-Hoo?" And Grandpa said, "Lady, it ain't even carbonated."
Wait, sorry, it's taking me a long time to get to the Yoo-Hoo. Here's we have in this this is sort of the pop culture section of the museum where Yogi's a Yoo-Hoo bottle is. I don't know if you can see that. And
he did a lot of fun commercials. That yellow thing in the box down there is this thing. It's a inflatable 3-foot tall grandpa that you can throw these like plastic baseballs at. And I'm like, Grandpa, you were a blow up doll.
and then maybe a lot of
you've made it when, right?
the Aflac commercials with the crazy duck.
Gator, Ron Guidry tells a very funny story about the Aflac commercial. He drove Grandpa to and from the airport. Grandpa flew from spring training to go and shoot that commercial. Gator drops him off at the airport and picks him up on the way back. And when Grandpa jumps in Gator's truck on the way back from after the Aflac commercial, Gator was like, "How'd it go?" And the first thing Grandpa says to him is, "Gator, the duck don't talk."
Okay, we're at the real tip. We could go another hour with you two. You're terrific.
I know. I'm so flattered that people think this is not watching paint dry.
I'd like to get your best memories. Jen, your best memory working here, and Lindsay, your best memory to follow her up about your grandfather.
Well, I'll just say I came to the museum in 2017. So sadly, Yogi had already passed, had passed 2 years prior to that. But I always say I have never loved someone so much who's passed who was not my family member. And I feel like I've really gotten to know Yogi because I've gotten to be closer to Lindsay and her dad, Larry, who have been so helpful and really pulled me in. I'm just coming back to the Don Larson picture, which is one of my favorite stories. And during COVID, we did some funny things where we tried to recreate photos and post them on social media. So I have a hilarious picture of me and my dog in Yankees jersey with a number 8 and my dog leaping into my arms. But I just wanted to make sure Jack Billig in our audience said Don Larson and Yogi. So this is this great moment in the perfect game that probably everybody on the call knows about. But okay, I'll turn it back to Lindsay. Go ahead.
My favorite memories of Grandpa are more of the ones that you all probably have with your grandparents. I used to, when I was a little girl, I loved decorating the Christmas tree with them. That was a tradition that we had every year. Grandpa was famous for making meatballs, and my grandmother would get like just tons of meatball mix and mix everything up. But my grandfather and I and some of the other grandkids would come over and roll like a million of these little tiny meatballs with Grandpa. So that was really fun. I loved going to watch him at the ballpark when I was a little girl. I just thought it was really cool just to see him out there on the field. A funnier memory I have is when the movie 61 came out. I was in my early 20s and I was working for ESPN magazine, and I went to my whole family, we went to the premiere in the city, and it was like Billy Crystal and Robin Williams and all these people were there. But I was sitting behind, my grandmother and grandfather were in front of me with Joni and Whitey Ford, and Grandpa and Whitey were sitting next to each other, and I was just over Grandpa's right shoulder, like so I could hear him and Whitey talking the whole time. And every time something happened on the movie screen, Grandpa was like, I don't remember it happening like that. I thought this happened. Is that you? That guy's better looking than you. You never had hair like that. I mean, and it was hysterical for 2 hours just listening to them banter back and forth about what was happening in front of them on the movie screen. And that's something I will never forget. But like I said, most of my memories are just, playing wiffle ball in the yard and like just typical grandpa stuff.
John, do we have questions from our friends out here? I'm sure there's somebody out there that has an interesting question.
Well, Jenny has been getting to all of the questions.
There are some in can the film narrated by Tom Brokaw that we show in the museum be seen online? I'm not sure, but I will investigate that and send Jenny an email.
I can answer that for you. Sadly, no, it cannot. We have tried really hard to find where it's streaming, and there have been professors here at Montclair State who have asked me about being able to get that. Apparently we have the one and only copy, so you got to come here and see it here.
Can we make one?
I guess they could. Yeah, that's what we got to find out. Yeah.
Put that on the list. We'll put it on the list.
Put it on the list. Exactly.
It takes about, if you were to walk through the museum yourself and read all of the placards, I would say maybe an hour and 15 minutes, and then 40 minutes or so to watch the whole movie.
No, the whole movie is only 22 minutes. But actually what we also say sometimes, Lindsay, is that you can easily do the museum in 45 minutes.
They're not reading everything.
But you can't, yeah, but like you'll do a thorough job. But if you really want to see everything, yes, Lindsay's right, like an hour and 15.
The best way to visit the museum, I think, is to wait for the Jackals baseball season to start at the beginning of May. And we stay open an extra 2 hours on the days that they have games. We stay open till 7. So if you come to the museum around 5, you can spend 2 hours going to the museum and then go out and sit in the stands and watch a little minor league baseball, and you get a little bit more bang for your buck and that fun little minor league baseball feel. And if you happen to do that on a Saturday home game, you will also get a fireworks show. So then you're really talking about building a good day.
Saturday night. They do fireworks on Saturday nights at 9 p.m. Yeah. And even though the Jackals have had there's been mixed opinions about how good they are.
No, there's no mixed opinions. They're terrible. They're absolutely horrible. I could pick, honestly, like if I pick 3 people off the top of this thing, me, Roz Liebenthal, and Jennifer Stile, we could be the outfield and we'll be better than whoever they put out there tomorrow. Okay, like they're terrible.
But Lindsay, I thought last season they actually won in whatever.
Which really says more about how bad the other teams were.
Right.
How about? Hey, this is Roz's husband, and I resent that.
Roz is maybe a great center fielder. Come on. I hear she has a wicked arm.
Like I just said about your grandpa and your grandma. She was the best catch I ever made. So
that's great.
All right, John, what do we have?
Well, we do have one more question that just popped up. Whether Yogi ever...
Did it just go? I know people want me to stand still, but there's another tour going around, and I just wanted to make sure we don't conflict. So I'm just going to come stand in front of a Yogi picture right here. Okay.
So Roz asked if Grandpa talked at great length about his military experience. He did not talk at all about his military experience. Like many, many members of that greatest generation, I think that what they went through was incredibly stressful. And when they came home, he would make jokes if people asked him about D-Day, and he would say, oh, it was like the 4th of July, like fireworks. Like, all right, I'm sorry, it was not like the 4th of July. People were getting bits of themselves blown off in front of him. He spent time fishing dead bodies out of the water. He almost got killed a few times. It was not like the 4th of July. That was something that he said to get us all to hush up and stop asking him questions. We had one very interesting moment. My dad and my brother Larry and I went to my grandfather's house to watch the first episode of Band of Brothers when it came out on HBO. and he watched it very intently. And when the credits started to roll, he started to talk. And I started to say something. My dad hushed me across the room, and he talked a little bit about what it had been like off the beach that day. And then he stood up to get a drink of water, and he was out of it, and it never happened again. There was one time at the museum when PBS was showing they came out with a new documentary on D-Day a couple years before Grandpa Yogi passed, and it had a lot of raw footage that they had never been seen before. And at the end of that movie, I went down. I went down. It wasn't even at the end. I think it was actually still running. I just checked to see if Grandpa needed anything, and he was down there going like this, like making this whistling noise. And at this time, Grandpa was like sometimes in and out. He had a little bit of dementia. The whistling noise was him remembering the sounds of the German 88s going over his head. So he had some crazy memories of what happened, but no, he didn't talk about it, and it came out in some interesting ways.
Wow.
The more upbeat question, I think.
Right.
Did Yogi have interest in non-sport things like art, history, Italian culture?
He loved to go to the opera with my grandmother, which is not something that you would expect, but they did that a lot. He really liked food. He liked to go out for Italian food. I think it just reminded him of being at home. People always ask me if he was a wine drinker. He wasn't really. He drank mostly his one glass of vodka a day. He loved to watch movies. He actually had a show on Yes Network called Yogi in the Movies, where he was doing movie reviews with Bob Lorenz. But he loved Westerns. He loved all the old John Wayne movies, all kinds of old stuff with Marilyn Monroe. He was always watching like the movies on Turner Classics and AMC. Really did like movies a lot. Loved to play golf. Just really liked to he would never say no to going to like one of his buddies' golf outings, because he would get to just catch up with his old baseball pals. Just like kind of liked hanging out with his friends and reminiscing.
Lindsay, I have one last question for you before we close it out. What attribute from Yogi Berra is in you right now? What have you found within you that is very much part of him?
I mean, I don't know if they are actually part of me, but there are things that I try to I try to think like him a lot. And he had I say this a lot, he had like the most forthright moral compass in the world. Everything was black and white, no shades of gray. And if you had a problem or didn't know what to do about something and you went and told Grandpa, he would give you an answer that was so simple that you couldn't believe you didn't see it yourself. And a lot of the times the reason we don't see the simple answer is because it's the harder one, right? And he just didn't see that. This is the right thing to do, and this is what you should do. So I try to look at things through his lens a lot and take a lot of the noise out and try to see the forest for the trees, as they say. But I don't know that I get like teary when I start to say this, but like that he set a bar that not a lot of us will really be able to live up to, but his legacy is in the fact that we try. So.
And Sal, if I can just add to that, because Lindsay's probably too humble to say this, but I would say she has his amazing work ethic and his ability to persevere.
Yeah, and his passion.
And
I saw that, and the reason I got that question, it was her taking over the outfield. You could see
they need help. I volunteer for free. I was good in college. I was good.
All right, John, take us away and close us out. Let's hear what we have to show everybody.
That sounds good. So all of this will be in the follow-up email that our registrants will be receiving. So I want to make sure everyone goes to the website for the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center and plan your trips, people. I think that's the conclusion we've come to. You've got to check this out in person.
Also, check out their gift shop.
Yes, definitely do. Support these museums. After the last couple of years, they need it. And my gosh, how wonderful that they have spent this time with us today. So that's the best way to say thanks. Also, we have Yogi Berra, Eternal Yankee by Alan Barra. That is the book that was recommended. So we'll include the link to that. And I want to make sure that Lindsay's website and Twitter get plugged too, because thank you so much, Lindsay, for.
Go buy your stamps too before they disappear.
Yes, commemorative stamps by the U.S. Postal Service for Yogi
They're
Berra.
hard to find in person now, but they're still available on the USPS website. But even our local post offices have mostly been sold out. So you got to order them on the interwebs.
There you go. That's the only way. That's a smart way to get them then. And then program.
Thank you again. Oh, go ahead, John.
Oh yeah, I just our little self-promotion wrap up. This is going to be up on YouTube and on Facebook. So if you want to share this program with people, those are ways to do it. And you can see what we've got coming up on Instagram. Sal is on Twitter, and of course, home base is salstgeorge.com. And that's it from me.
Thank you again, Lindsay and Jenny. I couldn't ask for two better guests. And people are already asking for a third visit to your location. So we'll wait till later on in the year and we'll give you a buzz. And I'm sure you have new things to show us.
Yeah, we always have a really good new. So that's why maybe in June we'll do, for Pride Month, we'll do a Billie Jean King exploration.
How long will that exhibit be up?
That'll be up from June through the end of the year, through December of 22.
Perfect.
So we have plenty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. We had a great time. See you next week with the story of the Godfather. Bye-bye, everybody.